So this is module 1 of my course on how to build and market a successful local yoga or Pilates or any other local business. I'm Marie Page. Module 1 is all about strategy. I think strategy can be quite a scary word really for people that aren't used to running businesses. It sounds like a thing that a load of men in suits sit around at a board table discussing. But we have to think strategically when we set our business up. So we have to ask the big strategic questions and take the strategic decisions. So I'll guide you through some of the things that, to my mind, you need to think about when thinking about your strategy. What is your brand? What is your approach? So what are you doing? What are you planning on teaching or selling? What service are you providing? And what is your approach? How are you going to do it? So strategy is very much about the how. But you also want to think about what your potential students are looking to achieve. What are their goals? Why might they want to come to your classes? Can you align what you want to deliver with what they're looking for? So what are their pain points? What are their deepest desires? Can you address that? But also, what are their fears? So when I first started, and once I got to know my students, because I'm quite chatty about the way that I teach, so after class I'd say, oh, well, how are you finding it? And is this as you expected it? And they said to me, well, we were worried. They were brand new to yoga. We were worried. We thought you'd be teaching us all the weird stuff. And I was like, well, what do you mean by the weird stuff? And they're like, chanting. So that gave me a little bit of a nugget of insight as to how I might go about strategically building and branding my business. If I was addressing the needs of a particular segment of my community, so the people that ended up showing up at my classes were often middle-aged women in particular that hadn't done yoga before, and they were saying, we don't want to do the weird stuff, we just want to get more bendy, flexible, strong, fit, lose weight, then I shouldn't be positioning my business as one that's all about the pranayama, the meditation, Eastern religion, talking about Sanskrit and Hindu deities and that kind of thing. That wasn't what they thought they were looking for. So whilst I might kind of put some of those things in by stealth, and I often will do some breathing in my classes, it's not something that I make a big fuss of in my promotion. So you see, I'm starting to develop my strategy to what my students are looking for. What other fears might they have? Well, you're going to need to answer these questions for yourself and perhaps talk to some people. But a lot of my students were brand new to yoga, didn't think they were flexible enough, didn't think they were bendy enough, didn't think they were fit enough, felt that they were perhaps too old, too wobbly. I had people with some health issues and they were worried about those things. They can also have some misconceptions about who yoga is for. So I address that, for instance, by saying that I won't contort you into pretzel shapes, that my classes are for people with any body shape, with any degree of fitness. You don't need to be bendy and flexible to take my classes. So they're just a few examples really of fears, misconceptions, or perhaps expectations, and thinking about how you can address them. Through these presentations, I have put quite a lot of photos in of my classes, and I'll refer to them from time to time. So let's just look at these two pictures I've got here. This is my lounge in my house. Now, I do rent a local space, a hall to teach in, but it's not always available at the times that I want. And certainly when I was starting out, I had a big room that I could pretty much clear sofas and things out of, and didn't want to pay to rent another space if I could actually get people into my room. So you see that room's pretty crowded. I can get about 8 to 10 people in that room reasonably comfortably. But you can see the kind of people I've got. You know, we've got a man who's in his sort of 40s, 50s. Then there's Kat in front who's, she's actually an American lady, probably in her 40s, not remotely bendy, but oh my word, the progress that she made in a few weeks, and she's doing a posture here that we call flying lizards, and she was so excited about doing this for the first time because to her it looked like a really impressive picture, a posture, and I took the picture of it because she wanted to go home and show her husband about it. So this is the kind of way my classes are: super friendly, we celebrate our achievements and successes, but they're also very non-competitive as well. And the picture at the top, it was Christmas, so of course I decorated the room. And you see it looks like a home kind of environment. Whether that's good or bad, I don't know. I've asked the students and they say they feel it's very welcoming and they're very happy with it. But it's not going to be for everyone, and you might want more of a specific studio space, really. Another strategic thing here is to not be all things to all yogis or all Pilates practitioners or whatever else. So in my life as a marketer, I have talked to clients a lot and said, well, who are we targeting? Who's the customer here? Well, they say, everyone. I'm like, well, we don't really want to just target everyone. Who's your ideal customer? Give me a pen portrait of who the ideal person is that you want to teach. So here is me with my friend Annette, who has recently qualified as a yoga teacher. She's an Ashtanga specialist, and she really wants to teach Ashtanga classes. So she is creating her pen portrait of the kind of person that is likely to be wanting to go to an Ashtanga class. That's going to be very different to the kind of person that will come to one of my classes, because my classes really are for people new to yoga, beginners or improvers. And my students tend to be a little bit older, whereas Annette is looking for people across the realm, but they're probably people that are doing yoga already, or they're fit, bendy, relatively athletic, and wanting to sort of fast track into a more active kind of practice. So ask yourself, who are your classes aimed at? What age, what level are they? How do they perceive themselves? Are they sporty? Are they bendy? Or are they unfit? Are they stiff? Have they got other health issues? You might be wanting to aim your classes at pregnant women, doing pregnancy yoga or postnatal yoga, or you might want to be doing a chair yoga class for older people. So think about who you're going to be aimed at, and you may have 2 or 3 different segments here, but these strategic questions are really crucial for you to think about before you jump into Facebook pages and groups and websites and promotional material. Are your classes friendly and sociable, or quiet and serious? Later on in this presentation, I have a screen grab from my friend Wendy, who teaches Chikri yoga locally. Now, her classes are pretty quiet and serious. There's no chat really before you get into the room. People come into the room, they lie or go into child on their mat and start really to meditate at that point. My classes are completely different from that. Everyone's chatting and they're highly sociable. And I think that is as much a part of what I'm doing in yoga, because people are looking to make friends, as anything else I'm doing in terms of physical practice in the class. There's no right or wrong about this. It's what works best for you and the kind of yoga that you want to teach. And then if you're teaching yoga, and I do recognise that you may well be a Pilates or other instructor here, are you going to incorporate the weirder stuff? What sort of level is that going to be at? Is that just going to be scratching the surface, or are you really going to be doing quite a lot of chanting or meditation? And is that what people are looking for? How are your classes going to change from week to week? With an Ashtanga class, they're typically, you go through the same sequence from week to week. So for me, I would get super bored teaching the same thing every week. So I work to a theme each week, or you might want to work to a particular philosophy aspect each week, or, sort of looking at things like spring equinox or full moon, or letting go. There's all manner of things you could do rather than just thinking about, well, this week we're going to do hip openers. But if you are going to change it from week to week, how do you communicate that? And can you make it part of your USP? So that's an exciting part of the experience of coming to your yoga classes. What can people expect on a week-to-week basis? Then ask yourself, what days and times are you willing to work? across the fitness industry with personal trainers and instructors, what tends to happen when people first start working is that they say yes to everything. So they find themselves running around like a crazy person from one centre to another, teaching multiple classes a day, doing a lot of travelling, being up really early in the morning to get that before work crowd, and then teaching late into the evening as well. Now, that may be what you want to do, but, you know, at my age and at my stage of life, and I've got a normal full-time job as well, I've got to limit that. And actually, I don't particularly want to work a load of evenings, but I am happy working weekends because that doesn't interrupt so much with my normal working life. So, and also for me, because I'm doing some teaching at home and my office is based at home, lunchtime classes work super well for me because it gets me away from my desk. It's only going to be an hour and a half or something away from my desk, and I've just got to go down the corridor. So lunchtimes work for me, maybe an early evening class and some weekends. So that was my decision, but you may have something completely different. You may want to do a very full day of teaching and then leave a few days off. You may want to just do evenings because you have a normal job that you can't leave during the day. And then finally, are you going to offer private sessions? I got asked this a lot when I first launched, and I wasn't really ready to do private sessions. I didn't feel I had the experience to do it. And I was a little bit terrified as to what on earth I would teach someone in a one-to-one situation, and they might present me with things I didn't really know how to handle. I feel much more confident about doing private sessions now, having got a lot of teaching hours under my belt. But if you are going to do private sessions, why would you be doing them? Is it just to get people that are a little bit scared or have some health issues so that you can work with them to introduce them to yoga so you can get to understand them before you put them into a mainstream class? Or are they actually needing something specialised on a week-to-week basis? And, you know, you're wanting to charge a lot more for that than you will a class because you can't, you know, you've only got one person that you're teaching. So what is the sort of going rate for that in your area? And what do you want to charge? And are you going to charge extra if you are going to go out to them? So don't be all things to all people. Think about what you're going to offer and who you're going to offer it to. This brings us to a strategic concept called branding. I would suggest that this is not about your product, actually. This is about you and it's about your customers. And understanding your audience here is key. So what is a USP? You may have heard of this before. It's a unique selling proposition. It's the reason that your classes are different from, and hopefully better, than the other classes that you find locally. I don't actually particularly think of other classes locally as competition. It's partly because I tend to find my students from places where they're not doing yoga already. So, you know, the local other teachers I'm not taking from them. I'm actually bringing more people into the local pool of people that want to do yoga. But you may well be seeing other local classes as competition. But before we can really think about our USP, we need to look at demographics. So what gender are we teaching? You know, with yoga and Pilates, it often is predominantly women, but it may not be. So my son does some amazing, he does calisthenics, and I'm encouraging him to think at some point about starting to teach what he does. You know, a lot of body weight stuff, arm balancing, handstands, you know, just doing incredible things on his body with his own muscle strength and using his own body weight to get himself fit. His target market is going to be so different to mine because it'll be much more young men or younger women, and they're going to want a very different thing to what my target market would want. Ask what their beliefs are, what are their attitudes to your classes and the yoga or Pilates or whatever industry in general. And those beliefs may be wrong. They may not be a true depiction of what actually happens, and you may need to change them or counter them in some way, but you need to be aware of what they might be so you can address them, particularly if they're beliefs that stop people coming to your classes. What about their desires? What do they want from classes? What are they trying to achieve? The classes may be a bit of a necessary evil in order to get that toned, sculpted body that they think they want. What are their goals? What are they trying to get? So I always, when I do my student questionnaire, which is something that I encourage all my students to submit before coming to a class, I ask them what they're doing, what they're wanting to do from yoga. And they almost all say they want to be more flexible. A lot say they want to be more fit. A number say that they want to improve their strength, and for some it's doing something that's quite sociable. So, you know, in that kind of order, how are you going to build your brand based on what those people are looking for, and how are you going to build your actual classes? And then their feelings. How do they feel about coming to a class? Are they super confident, or are they nervous? Are they suspicious? Are they open? Think about how you are yourself when you go into a brand new class. I've been to so many classes over the years, and I still think it's quite scary when I first go into a classroom. And I'm a confident extrovert. What about people that don't feel like that? And what can you do both in your branding, in your marketing, on your website, in your emails, in your phone calls, and crucially at the start of a class to help people feel more comfortable? So if you look at my Google reviews, you'll see a lot of people say really welcoming, friendly classes. I have gone out there to try and be super warm and friendly at the beginning of my classes and as people come in, and I always will introduce someone new to other people in the room, and then it's a lot less scary because they've got a name, even if they forget it, but they've got some connection with that person, and everyone was new to begin with. So coming back to this unique selling proposition, how do we do this? Well, I'd suggest that you need to think of three things. Our service, you know, my classes, do what, for who, by, you know, what's your methodology, what's your approach? So think about this. Marie Page's yoga classes do something awesome, you know, will help you get more bendy for all body shapes, or pregnant women, or middle-aged men, you know, whatever it is you want to say. You probably wouldn't use middle-aged men in a USP. By, and you to, that's something that makes you different, you know, something about your passion, your belief, something about your story. So here is my initial USP. Friendly yoga classes in, and that's my geographic area, and I do think that's quite important when you're working locally, and when we talk about local SEO you'll understand why. So at the moment it's friendly yoga classes in Chorleywood and Rickmansworth for normal, non-bendy people. Hatha style classes suitable for beginners with no weird stuff. So Hatha is a very broad church with yoga. Most of the yoga that we teach in the West is Hatha style. And if I don't have that in, people will say, well, what style of yoga do you teach? So, you know, yeah, I'm quite an alignment-led Hatha teacher. And on my About page on the website, I'd go into more detail about that. But for me right now, Hatha is going to be good enough. You may be teaching power yoga or flow yoga or restorative, yin, whatever it is you're doing, use this to just describe what you're doing. And even if people don't know what it is, it helps them give something that they can kind of look it up and consider it. And you see, I've got that no weird stuff in upfront and proud. So I find it a little bit sad actually, because I quite like some of the weird stuff, but I do put it in a little bit by stealth, and it's certainly in a more sort of Western way, and make a few apologies for it, and then ask how people found it afterwards, and they're like, oh, we found that really relaxing. It was really nice. Here's another USP. This is a yoga retreat in Portugal. If you love your yoga and want a beautiful retreat to go on, I would recommend Valdemozes in the mountains of Portugal. So Valdemozes is a yoga retreat set in the tranquil pine forests and mountains of Portugal, providing restorative yoga, massage, nourishing vegetarian and vegan food, forest bathing, wooden walks, wild swimming, relaxation and deep sleep. So I know that's all a little bit of a mouthful, and they may well want to tighten that up and take some of those things out. But those are all things that they know that their customers come for. The woodland walks, forest bathing, they're quite a big thing nowadays. Maybe not a lot to do with yoga, but plenty of people come to their retreats wanting to do that. Wild swimming, quite a big thing for them. And they have some specialist weeks about sleeping. But also, if you're going on a retreat, one of the things that you do want is you want to be able to sleep well. So that's an important part of it. And of course, the food when we're on holiday is really important. And often people think about retreats as being places where you have kind of less food and you're there to lose weight and kind of to detox and fast. Well, that's not the case with Aldermosis. Their food is incredible. And so they want to be upfront and proud about that. So now you've got your USP, and I tell you, it could take you several days to come up with this. So don't think it's going to be something that you can do super quickly, but do start thinking about it as you're thinking strategically. From that, you might be able to start writing your about text for your website or your Facebook page or profile. So here's a little bit more information from me. Friendly yoga classes for normal non-bendy folk. Marie Page teaches classes designed for men and women of different ages, sporting enthusiasm, shapes and sizes. Classes are suitable for complete beginners who would like to enjoy the benefits of increased flexibility, strength and balance, as well as those who have previously done yoga. The classes take place at, and there's my locations. Most have not done yoga before and would say they're not very flexible or have great balance. What they all have in common is a desire to get a little more supple and spend an hour or so a week taking time out from busy lives to relax and focus on something else. The classes are small and very accessible and friendly, no scary impossible pretzel shapes to contort yourself into, and no chanting or other stuff that might seem a bit weird. Now, I don't use exclamation marks very often, but I've kind of given myself permission to do so here because it's partly about showing that things are quite friendly and that I don't take myself too seriously. That helps allay some fears that people may have. Now, I will develop this as time goes on. I'm starting to get a fair specialism in teaching balance. I really enjoy balance related classes, and balances feature a lot more in my classes proportionally than they do for other local teachers. So I might start to push the balance element a little bit more. But this is a work in progress, and you can always change your about text. It's not set in stone because it's on the internet. Here are some examples from other teachers. I've pulled these out of the British Wheel of Yoga Spectrum magazine. These are a couple of teachers that are teaching at their annual congress, and I thought they were really beautiful about text. So I'll read these through to you. Lisa Hemmings teaches alignment-based hatha and restorative yoga classes in North London. She's been practicing since 2000 and teaching since 2014. Now, I'm not convinced that these how long you've been working for are necessarily what people need, but it's a bit of a mark of kind of attainment, isn't it, when you've been teaching for years and years and years. I mean, I've actually been practicing since 1990. So perhaps I should put that in because that's going to outdo quite a lot of people. The fact that I haven't been teaching very long, I just kind of skirt by that and just talk about how long I've been practicing. Anyhow, Lisa's underlying message is that yoga is for everybody and interacts with the students in a way that makes them feel comfortable and in safe and capable hands. So, Lisa sounds a little bit like me, doesn't she? It's not unusual for a philosophical theme to be woven throughout a class. So I really like that. I perhaps need to talk about that a little bit more in my about text and talk about how each class is themed and we look at maybe a focus on a different body area or, some different aspects. And she will combine this with a light, fun-hearted and down-to-earth teaching style. Students leave feeling positive, relaxed and balanced. I think that's brilliant, and that will cause me to go back and look at my about text. Okay, so we learn all the time and we tweak and change. Let's look at one more. Leanne Jones is a Hatha and Jivamukta yoga teacher and Thai yoga massage practitioner. She's been practicing yoga since 2008 and teaching since 2011. Leanne found yoga at a tough time in her life and realised that slowly but surely it was changing her life for the better. Isn't this interesting? She is sharing something of herself here. She's starting to tell a story, and that can be very, very powerful in about text. Leanne's classes are open to all levels and include some chanting, pranayama, yoga philosophy, vinyasa flow and sequences, massage, meditation. The Jivamukti classes have an eclectic playlist of music. Ooh, well, that's all quite interesting, isn't it? So you see, she is really upfront about the fact that she's got some very traditional yoga elements such as chanting, pranayama, and yoga philosophy in. So people are going to go to her classes that are looking for that kind of thing, or or if they turn up to the class, they won't be surprised when they find it. She's covering vinyasa flows, so those people that are wanting something more restorative won't necessarily be looking at a vinyasa flow class. And Jiva Mukti, well, I have no idea perhaps what that means, but eclectic playlist of music, that sounds like it could be quite interesting. So I mentioned about telling stories, and this is the bit where it is all about you. So this is the About page on my website. It actually goes down a lot deeper than this. This is just the top element for it. So I first explored yoga in a workplace Iyengar class nearly 30 years ago. I was not remotely flexible and remember having to use a virtual scaffold of blocks and blankets to get into alignment for some postures. So I'm right up there talking about how long I've been practicing for and the fact that I am not a naturally bendy yogi type person, and that I absolutely get what it means when you have to have a lot of support and blocks and props in a class. And then what is that weird picture? Well, that's an MRI scan, a recurring back injury. I've got multiple bulging discs in my thoracic and cervical spine, as well as significant degeneration. Began troubling me several years ago and forced me to give up the high impact sports that I previously enjoyed. An MRI scan showed my spine to look like that of a 70-year-old, and each day began in pain and extreme stiffness. So, does anyone relate to that who is coming to my classes? And is that a helpful thing to say? Is that a good story to share? I don't think it's necessarily a story I would share if I was trying to teach 20-somethings that were all, had the bodies of dancers and, had no physical health problems. But for the kind of people I'm teaching, that is extremely relatable to them. And I often have people in the classes that have back issues, and they're very, very reassured that this is something that I have gone through myself, so they feel that I understand it better than some might. And then here's the success story, kind of a classic story arc happening here. I rediscovered yoga after a brief foray into Pilates and gradually found that my pain eased as my flexibility and core strength increased. So I'm not making huge claims here. I'm not saying if you have back problems, yoga is guaranteed to make you pain-free. I'm just telling my story. And then I go down in the rest of the About text to talk a little bit more about the classes and the kind of yoga I teach. If you are interested in understanding more about storytelling, I do have a course in the Digital Academy all about storytelling in social media. And I talk about the basic template that all the great stories of the world have. It's the storytelling arc, and it has a hero, and there's a journey, and there's problems, and then you have mentors and allies, and there's a villain, and you finally come through triumphant. And that little storytelling arc can be very, very helpful when you are thinking about how to tell your own story. So I think it's about an hour at most, that little presentation, but could be quite useful for you. So it's one that I did for Neil's Yard Remedies Consultants. So it's kind of branded up with their colours as well, but very, very applicable to yoga and Pilates teachers too. Okay, moving to a different strategic choice here. What about your prices? So you've got a number of decisions to take here. You may just want to do drop-in classes. So this is pay as you go. So what is your price going to be for pay as you go? A standard price, I don't know, 8, 10, 12, 14 pounds for a session. You just need to decide what you're going to do. What's the downside with drop-in? Well, they're not going to come every week. And so if they're not there, you're not going to get paid. So you will have some lean times when, I don't know, during half term or the other school holidays. Are you going to offer some discounts for bulk booking? I do this. I offer a 6 lesson block booking where they get a £4 discount. So I'm charging at the moment £12 for pay as you go and £8 for the block booking. But what I realised is that people really anchored in on the discounted price. So in their head, my class is at £8. And then they get a bit grumpy when they have to pay more than that. Because, for instance, the 6-week block booking, the 6-class block booking, they've got to use that within 6 weeks. They've either got to come every week, or that if they miss a week, they need to come to 2 classes in a week in order to use all those classes up. So you need to take a decision on this. I don't think I'd necessarily do it quite the same way in future. I might do a 4-week block booking or 4-class booking at, say, £10. It's actually incredibly hard to put your prices up after you've launched. And I have learnt that to my cost, really. I know I can get away with charging more. No other local teachers are charging as little as I am for the block booking things. So you need to do your local research. And I did. I just kind of wasn't that confident that I'd necessarily get that many people in. So I wanted to sort of undercut the rest. But it is really hard to put the prices up because they're people that you see week in, week out. And you know that they just think you're money grabbing if you're putting the prices up. So it's not like an e-commerce situation where you're at arm's length from all those people. And if you increase your price as well, you don't really see them and talk to them. So you don't feel so bad about it. I also offer an all-you-can-eat membership, which is kind of akin to my local gym. You can go to as many classes as you like there if you can get into them. And I've priced that at a very similar price point to my local gym. I started out at £46 for the month. And anyone that started at £46 is continuing on that. Nowadays, I've put it up to £49. So any new people coming in are paying that amount. And what I found was that if people are doing that all-you-can-eat membership, they are generally coming to at least 2 classes a week. So they're actually getting incredibly good value. Some people are effectively paying between about £4 a class. You need to have a good enough space to cope with the numbers if you're going to be selling a lot of all-you-can-eat memberships, because otherwise what happens is they will end up block booking all of your classes out, and you've got no space for people that are paying your pay-as-you-go drop-in price, which is super frustrating for them, frustrating for new people that would like to come in and there's no space for them, and frustrating for you because actually the people that are in the room in front of you, they're all paying quite a low price per class. So use it with caution. It depends on your local situation. Are you going to allow a cancellation window? So when people have booked ahead with me, so they've done a pay-as-you-go price and they've maybe booked into a class because I use a booking app, will I let them cancel right up until 5 minutes before the class, or will I have a cancellation window? So the window I have at the moment is quite tough. It's 12 hours. So if people haven't cancelled within 12 hours, they lose that money. Now, in reality, if they email me and tell me a sob story, you know, the morning of the class, so, oh, I'm so sorry, I was doing gardening yesterday and I've woken up and my back is really sore, or I've got a migraine, or work is insane, I will often just say, okay, no worries, I'll just put you in for another day instead. But I will make sure that they know that it's special dispensation and it's not to be a regular occurrence. So how nice do you want to be? I think cancellation windows are a good idea. My local authority gym, where you really struggle to get into classes because they're super popular, even if you're a member, it's really tough to get into a class. They have a really tough policy. If you cancel within 4 hours of the class starting, even if you're a fully paid up member, you have to pay a penalty charge of, I think, something like £4 before you can book any more classes. So, you know, you might want to follow a policy like that. It's not very yogi, but that's what others are doing. Strategically, you need to be thinking about what you can afford to charge. So what is your break-even point after costs? And we will do some budgeting in a moment so we can see how much the room hire and all our equipment and training and everything is going to cost us. How many students do I need at the different price points in order to break even and then actually start earning some money out of this? And when I'm building up, how long can I afford to run with students below the break-even point? One other thing to just throw into the mix on pricing strategy is I started, and I will share this sort of starting methodology with you, with about 6 weeks of free classes. I call it the drug dealer model. So you get them in, you get them hooked, and then you start charging them. And yeah, I had a load of freeloaders, but quite a lot of people did stay. But what I did to try and lure them into staying and signing up for a membership was I kicked off the new term, the paying term, with a workshop. So I called it a beginner's yoga workshop, but you could do a workshop based on balances or twists or inversions, hip openers, whatever you want to theme your workshop. And it was a 2-hour workshop and I billed it at £25. But I said, if you buy the monthly membership, you get the workshop included free of charge. So monthly membership was at that time £46. So they get a £25 workshop included in that. They've only got to go to a couple of classes after that in the month, and hey, it's, you know, they're quids in and they're starting to get into a regular pattern. And then of course, you know, particularly if you then put the monthly membership fee up, apart from those that are already hooked in at the lower fee, then they're likely to be staying in with you. So little psychological approaches. Yeah, it's sales, isn't it? And it doesn't sit terribly comfortably with a lot of yogis who, you know, want to share the love and give everything away for free. But we have mortgages and rents to pay. We've got costs to make. We shouldn't be feeling guilty about charging a fair sum for our services. Budgeting. What should you include? Now, I haven't got everything in here at all, I'm sure, but I've got some headline things here. So what are my setup costs going to be, assuming I'm setting up a new business? I allowed about £1,000 for website design and development. You may well not spend that much money. I was very specific about what I wanted. I wanted to work with a really good developer. I wanted a site that was really quick to load because of search engine optimization. I didn't want one with loads of baggage on it. So I'm using a WordPress site, but I used an HTML, very stripped down theme, and had a lot of that coded from scratch. So that was why that was quite expensive. You may well do something different. For instance, you might be working with Squarespace or Wix, in which case you will not have such a big a setup cost unless you're paying someone else to do some work for you. I paid a designer to do my logo and to pick up a few other little design things for me. You may have the skill yourself to do that. You may have a friend that can do it for nothing. You may use one of these services such as Fiverr to get a logo done really, really low cost. But, you know, I like working with my friends and giving them business, so that's what I did. Domain registration. So this is your www. It's going to cost you around about £15. And you'll have to continue to pay for that for as long as you have it. So that's a kind of annual cost, really. You will probably want to have an email address that works with your domain registration. So I'm marie@mariepageyoga.com. So I am going to need to pay for that. So let's budget that. It's about £15 a year. A lot of yoga teachers just use Hotmail or Gmail addresses. Depends how professional you want to look, really. I think for 15 quid, it's worth getting something nice and professional done. Data protection registrar, I'm keeping students' information on a computer, so legally I should be paying that £45 a year for that. So, you know, you ought to be budgeting for that. Insurance, I'm paying £53 with Covia. I got that insurance policy through Simply Business, and I've got fitness instructor cover. They know that I'm teaching yoga. You may well find that you're getting cover through Yoga Alliance or British Wheel of Yoga or some other area, but mine was 53. Then I spent quite a lot of time buying secondhand yoga mats, blocks, and if I could get them, straps. If I had to buy any new, I tried to buy them in bulk. So I've tried not to spend loads of money on that. I was very concerned about the environment. These things are made often from non-recycled products. So they're not necessarily that recyclable. So I thought if I can buy them second hand, that's stopping them going to landfill or sitting in a cupboard unused. Obviously, you can buy lovely eco-friendly mats such as cork mats, but they're going to cost you an awful lot more. So you need to take some decisions on that. And you will, particularly if you're teaching beginners, need to have a good stock of mats. And even if most of your customers normally have mats, you're going to need to have 1 or 2 spares, because always someone's forgotten them. Now, because I've had quite a lot of Iyengar training over my time, I am a bit of a prop obsessive. So you can see that's a picture of one of my classes. So I've got one of my older customers, Brian, there. So if he's sitting cross-legged, I will always make sure he's sitting on a block, because I want to get his knees a little bit lower. And, you know, if we're doing something like Happy Baby or a seated forward fold, he's probably going to need to have a strap to wrap around the feet. So most students will not be bringing them to a class to begin with, and you don't want to put that as a barrier in to mean that they've got to buy those things before they come to your class. So make sure that they know that they haven't got to bring anything with them. They'll inevitably then want to bring their own, because they'll, for hygiene reasons, or because they want a squishy mat, or in my case, I want a super non-stick mat. So people might want their expensive Lifeform mats rather than whatever it was that you've managed to buy secondhand. And also, it's about your brand. Do you want to have super beautiful colour coordinated mats and blocks or not? How do you want that to look? Launch costs. You may well want to be paying for some Facebook and Instagram advertising, so put some money in for that. Google Ads, not a bad idea before your local search engine optimization kicks in, to be paying Google for some pay-per-click ads, so that when people are Googling yoga classes near me and they live within 4 miles of where you live, they're going to see your ads. And then something in the diary and then something in the budget for the cost of printing posters and leaflets. You may have a nice printer at home that you can use, but you're going to have to buy paper and ink as well. So just make sure you put something in the budget for that. All of these are offsettable for tax, of course. So, they're not really costing you quite as much as it says here. So I've then brought up the costs of the first year, including recurring costs, and then that 9, it's actually a monthly figure for annual costs. So all the things that are going to come up from that list above. So that list here, things like domain register, keeping that alive, and the email and all the rest. I've added those all together, divided by 12, and have come up with 9. Then month by month costs. So I use an app called tummy.com for lesson planning. So that's costing about £4 a month. I'm paying about £330 for room hire. Of course, I am doing quite a lot of teaching at home as well. So, this could be a lot more for you. I am paying an accountant to do my books at the end of the year. So I'm just allocating an amount per month for that. You may use something like Free Agent or Xero. So you'll need to be paying a monthly fee for that. AWS hosting. So this is my website hosting. I've put a nominal fee in here because I'm running other businesses that have got AWS instances. So I've just put £5 in for that. Instabook is my booking software that I use. So that's 2.5% of for me, it's 2.5% of all the fees coming in. Instabook nowadays is charging, I think, a base figure of something like $40 a month. So that's going to be up from the 12 that I've got in there. In fact, since I did the screen grab, I think I've started paying about £30, £35 a month, because the number of students I've got has increased. Then Stripe, so this is payment processing. So they are taking a percentage as well. Actually, that figure's a little bit too high from what I'm actually paying Stripe nowadays. But, so this would be the equivalent of PayPal or bank charges. I do a workshop every now and again, so I'm allocating £10 a month for ads on Facebook for those. I then need to think about, well, what if I'm off sick or away on holiday, can't make a class? I'm allocating in my budget an assumption that I will be paying tutors to cover classes. So I'm putting a nominal fee in there of £35 per class, and assuming that I'm going to have to pay for cover twice a month. Bit of petrol cost, travel to venues, membership, Yoga Alliance, British Wheel of Yoga. Now at that point I had student cover. I think that membership is more like, so that's a monthly membership, yes. So that's not the student cover member, that's a full member. membership is about 100 a year. You may well have British Wheel of Yoga membership as well, which I do, and I haven't put that in. As I say, this is just a nominal budget really. And then CPD and further training. So are you going on any workshops yourself? Are you doing any classes that you are paying for? Bit of a grey area as to how much of that you can put in, but hey, put it in and see what you can get away with. The vast majority of people are not going to be investigated by Inland Revenue. Just make sure you get receipts and put them all in, and certainly workshops that you're going to sort of where other teachers are being trained should absolutely be able to be offset against tax. So I now know what my setup costs are and what my monthly costs are. It's amazing how this adds up, doesn't it? Then I'm doing some financial modelling on income coming in. So my pay as what you go income, my monthly membership, my class pass, this is my block bookings, income from workshops. So I'm just doing some basic maths here. So if I've got 20 students multiplied by 12, that's that much money a month, adding it all up. So, you know, with that number of students, you know, at those prices, that's the amount of money I'm coming in. Take it away from the costs that I've already got on the previous page, and that's how much money I'm making a month. If we rapidly rank up the numbers of students, so we're up to 40 here, 15, 15, 15, a lot more income and suddenly a much higher monthly profit. So if you do this on a spreadsheet and you've got a sum calculation here, you can put the number in here, so it's 40. So here it says it wants to look at this square and multiply that by 12, and that gives you that answer there. So you can change these numbers and all of this will automatically change for you. So that will help you do a little bit of modelling. So it helps you to set your objectives and know where you're going for. How many students do you need? How many do you need at what price? Are your prices high enough? Because if you don't think you can get 20, 30, 40 students at that price, but you know you've got 10 that you know will come, even if you're charging quite a high price, maybe your prices need to be a bit higher. The other thing I did in my business planning, not particularly a strategic thing here, but I think it's a good idea to put a timetable together. Now, I'm actually in the process of moving from my local classes to Sussex. I'm building a house with a yoga studio in Sussex. So this is taken from my business plan. So my launch in Chorleywood in Hertfordshire, and then a second launch in Sussex. And I've just pulled this template from I think it was an Excel template, and just adapted it to suit me. So I've got a little progress monitor in here, who these things are assigned to, and then this is a Gantt chart. So what time of the year, what months is this work going to be needed to do, and you can see social media, what I'm doing, non-digital promotion, etc., etc. Okay, so that's my kind of to-do list and timetable. Let's think now what your launch strategy should be. Some people, particularly those that have got lots of friends, lots of connections, maybe you've done a lot of cover classes over the years, so you know an awful lot of people that are keen to do yoga and they've been begging you to do your own classes. So you know that you're going to be able to get a good number of people in quite quickly. So like that, maybe an initial launch workshop or an initial class, perhaps a free one, is the right way to go. For me, I came in from scratch. I actually initially started teaching just a few friends when I was teacher training, because they were like, oh, I'd really like to do yoga once you're qualified. And I was like, well, I'm actually, you know, insured to teach now. So why don't I practice my teaching on you guys for free while I'm doing my teacher training? So that's what I did, and my business kind of grew from that, really. I kind of put it on my Facebook profile and then started a Facebook group, and within no time friends were coming, and all of a sudden I'd got a business. So that free model worked quite well for me. Once I'd got that initial kind of set of friends and friends of friends coming, I then officially did free classes for a good kind of 6 weeks, something like that. It was all in the run up to Christmas. So I said, look, free yoga classes for the rest of the year. Pushed it out there on local social media groups. When you're offering something for free, you can generally get in to do quite a lot of posting without needing to go into the business post links. So I got a lot of exposure like that. and had an awful lot of people through the doors. Now, of course, you do get some freeloaders who are never going to come back and pay, but I actually ended up getting an awful lot of people in who hadn't done yoga before, probably wouldn't have come if I'd not done the month, 6 weeks of free classes, and they have now become some of my regular, most loyal customers. It's quite common in private classes, as we're talking about, to offer the first class free, whether that's yoga or Pilates. So that can be an idea to work in, particularly later on after you've launched. Do rope your friends in, ask them to spread the word, persuade them to come to some free classes. They may or may not stay, but actually at this early point, it's numbers that you want. You want new people coming in to make it seem to them that you've got a really viable business. And one thing that I saw recently is a friend of mine who's done local authority classes for a long time. She has decided to launch some of her own things with a charity first class. It happens to be her birthday that week, so she'd normally be doing a little birthday do with all her friends, and she said to them, right guys, for my birthday I'd like you all to come to a yoga class, and it's a charity thing, so it's a donation based class, and that's been her launch. So I think that launches with a nice attitude, doesn't it? So there'll be other launch strategies that you can come up with, but there are a few ideas there. What I would say is you want all your ducks in a row before you actually start teaching. So make sure you've got your social media up, make sure you've got your promotions up, make sure that you've got any ads set up and ready to run. Otherwise, you'll have empty classes for the first couple of weeks, and then, you know, just as your free offer finishes, that's when people are finally starting to find out about it. I think it's very helpful, particularly before you're starting to think about promotion, to think about the customer journey. And this to me is a strategic process. So what is their starting point? How does someone who doesn't know you, how do they find out about your classes? So this could be through Google search or perhaps in an online yoga directory. It may be because they see something about your classes on social media. Maybe that's one of your friends posting about them, or you've posted about them in a local group or on Nextdoor, which is a social media website. People may have told them about you, so word of mouth referrals. They may have seen posters or leaflets that you've done. You may have got some press in your local newspaper, some nice PR. So they start there, and then where do they go? Well, depending on sort of what the link is that they're given, they may, if it's from Google search, be coming into your website. Social media, that may be to your Facebook page, your Facebook group, or a website. Same with word of mouth. And posters, leaflets, local press, generally that will be pushing people towards your website. So this is indicating to me that a website is going to be quite important for you to have early on in your promotional strategy. The next step for me is that once they have been either in the Facebook group or the website, they are then encouraged to book a class. So that for me is Instabook. That's the booking site I use. So there's links all over my social media and my website into Instabook. I've also got a student information sheet that I ask people to complete. So that information, the link to that is on my kind of sign up pages. And if they have booked with Instabook, they will then get an email confirmation from Instabook, which says, here's a link for you to give your further information to me. So that initial class for me is generally free. And then the next step, of course, is to get them back into a paid for class. So I will have an automated email coming after they've come out from the first class, asking them how they found it, and suggesting they come to another class. And because they've gone through the booking process, I'll have data captured their email address, so I can hopefully add them to my mailing list for the following week, so that they know when the next lot of classes are. And they may well have liked my Facebook page or joined the Facebook group, so they're seeing information through that as well. I would also be encouraging newbies to come to my next beginners workshop. So I do a 2-hour beginners workshop every few weeks. So I'm kind of getting newbies in a little bit up to speed, so that they don't feel so out of control and not really knowing what's going on in the main classes. And then week by week communications, email and Facebook group and Facebook page updates. The other thing we do at this early stage of creating a new business is to do some competitor research. And I think you'd be a bit mad to launch some new classes without knowing what else is going on in the locality. As I said, I am in the process at some point in the next year or so of moving to Sussex, which I have to say is like taking Coles to Newcastle, taking yoga classes into Sussex, you know, Brighton area. There's lots and lots of yoga there already. So I have done some competitor research of a kind of 5-6 mile radius of where I'm going to be living and where my yoga studio will be, because I'm going to have a yoga studio in the house. And I have found kind of 5 competitors, if you like. And one of them is Pilates and the other is yoga. So you can see I've found the name of it, I've put the URL in, I've put the location, some information about it, and some prices as well. So I can see where I should be gearing my prices in comparison to other people if I want to use that as a kind of benchmark, really. I personally don't really consider them particularly competitors, because what I tend to do is appeal to people that aren't going to a yoga class locally anyway. They're completely newbies. But I am thinking about training to do aerial yoga. I'm going to put some aerial yoga points in my new studio. So I was quite interested in competitor research to see if anyone else was doing aerial yoga, and no one locally is doing it. You've got to go all the way into Brighton, which is a good 20-30 minutes away. So there's a little niche opportunity for me there to bring something to the market that isn't there already, and that might actually pull some people from mainstream classes who want to do something different, something perhaps new and exciting for them. One of the other things that we do at this initial stage of business planning is a SWOT analysis. So this is looking at your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities and threats. So you need to know what you're wanting to do. You need to know about yourself, the offer you are making, but you also need to know about what's going on locally, both in the micro environment, so sort of your particular, local competitors, but also the macro environment. What is going on generally in the world at the moment? So as I record this, coronavirus is rife in the UK. So that is a big threat to classes at the moment, and I'm seeing a lot of people deciding not to come to class right now. So that's a kind of macro threat. So you do your SWOT, and you can just read what I've kind of said. So this was a few months ago where I had no website. So, you know, that was at that point was a weakness for me. I've now got a website and it's really, really good. So that's a strength. But the weakness at the moment for my site is because it's brand new, it's not really got a lot of indexing by Google. So it's still not very findable in time, because it should be pretty well optimized for search. If you're searching for yoga classes near me, near my geographic base, you should be able to find me on Google very easily. So you use this SWOT to inform your strategic thinking. Some admin stuff that you might want to be considering at this stage. You're probably going to want a website. So what solution? We're going to look at this in a slightly later module, but you might be looking at things like WordPress or Wix or Squarespace. Have you got a name for your business? Have you got a logo? Have you got your about, your blurb, your USP, your strap lines, whatever you want to be working on there? Do you have those? And if not, you probably need to be thinking about doing that. And again, competitor research is important. Now, I was thinking about being Yoga with Marie, but when I did my slightly wider competitor research, I discovered that there was another business very close to me in Sussex, about 10-15 miles away, who was Yoga with Marie. So I'd be insane to be trying to compete with the same business name. So you do need to find that out. And also, even if that person was somewhere else in the country, I don't want to be competing for that same search phrase. So, you know, use something unique. If you have a name that is, say, for instance, Chorley Wood Yoga or Croydon Yoga Company, you've got a much stronger chance of doing well in search results for that Croydon or Chorleywood name when people are looking for it. So I could, if it wasn't already taken, be Sussex Yoga. Of course, someone's actually taken that, but you know, you want to be thinking about what the search terms are that people are using when they are looking for a class. I would suggest you want to get an email set up, either a yoga specific one, so I'm Marie at mariepageyoga.com, or a Gmail one, so mariepageyoga@gmail.com. Get it done early on rather than using whatever email address you normally use. Just have one email for all your yoga related stuff. You may want to set up a Facebook page or a Facebook group. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of that in due course. The image I'm sharing here is the group I initially set up. I set it up as a private group initially, and that was the first image that I had on it. I've been teaching using that mat today. And that group nowadays actually is an open group, and I'll explain that in due course. And you may want to get a booking app or think about doing something like Google Sheets to get information from students. Again, I will talk about that in a later module. Here are the different designs that my designer came up with for my logo. You can see I went for the one in the bottom left. I actually kind of asked people to vote on this as well. So people in my Facebook group, I of course didn't follow my own advice. My logo was not in place before I started teaching. It was not in place before I had the Facebook group. And so I actually had some students around that could vote on the logo. So if you haven't got a logo, or the one you've got is a bit naff and you want to change it, now might be a good time to do that. Some other things to be thinking about. What about when you are off sick or you're away on holiday? You do not want to be in a situation when you are having to provide a load of refunds to people. So far better to have someone that you can call on to cover your class in an emergency or in a planned break. And there's me and my friend Annette. She can certainly teach like me. I can't necessarily teach like her because she's an Ashtanga specialist, but she can very much do a class that my students would be very happy to do because she can follow the sort of lesson plan that I would be doing. So I arrange for her to cover my class when need be. And of course, if you've got an all-you-can-eat monthly membership, you do not want to be cancelling a load of classes, because those members that are paying to go to those classes are going to be pretty hacked off that they're paying you £40, £50 a month and you've been away for 2 weeks of it. So you're going to need to provide cover if you've got that kind of model. I know a lot of local yoga teachers that just work in, say, a 10-week block, and then they have a break for a few weeks, you know, often sort of school holidays, and then they start in the breaks again. And of course, you need to think about what you should pay. So I know what I've been paid to cover classes in the past. I know what local authorities pay. I know what local teachers pay. So you want to think about what you should be paying yourself. Legal things that you need to be thinking about. You need to be trained in first aid. It's a simple one-day course, not hugely expensive to do, and that covers you for 3 years. So get your first aid training in place. I went to someone that specialises in yoga first aid training, but any workplace-based first aid training course would be fine. You need to have an insurance policy in place. Public liability, and you know, if anyone got injured in your class, you need to have an insurance policy backing you up. It's not expensive. You need to have an accident report form with you in all of your classes. I keep mine in my yoga bag. So if there is a problem, if someone injures themselves, you get the form filled in once you've kind of dealt with all the first aid implications and everything. You get the form in, and particularly you want to have something like, you know, the student has been encouraged to go to casualty or go to see their doctor, and get the student to sign it. This is just all a little bit really about liability. You should have a written risk assessment for all the places that you teach in. And again, I would have that available in a folder, maybe in the back of my car. I would also have a first aid kit available in every building that I'm teaching in. And if in doubt, just have a good first aid kit in the boot of your car. I get my students to fill an information sheet in. I do this in a Google Doc, so I've got it all digitally, which means I haven't got to be trying to find loads of pieces of paper, you know, next of kin, that kind of thing, which might be at home, at my office, when I'm out and about. So if it's in a Google Doc, I can just access that information from my phone. Now, I have read, and it's particularly coming out of the States actually, that some teachers actually don't ask for health information and medical history from students, because as soon as you're aware of these things, the argument goes that you are then liable for them. So I will leave that to your discretion. I personally like to know what I'm dealing with. I like to know if people have got knee issues or back issues, because I would want to adapt some postures specifically for them, or remind them that, you know, oh, so-and-so, you've had a problem with your shoulder. You need to be quite careful about this posture. You need to be compliant with GDPR. So this is emailing and keeping people's email addresses and getting permission to do so. I'm not going to teach about that. We've got a course, a little one sort of short course about that in the Digital RT Academy if you don't know about it, or you can Google information. The government has plenty of information about GDPR and being compliant. What about if you are teaching and running a business here for the first time? So as soon as you start to turn over more than £1,000, you need to register with HMRC to let them know that you are working as a sole trader, that you are self-employed. Now, you may actually want to set up as a company. If you're going that route, I'm sure you've got good reasons for it, and you don't need me to tell you how you go about that. But most yoga teachers are simply set up as a sole trader, and there's a URL there with a load of advice on how you go about that. You need to keep your accounts, so keep all the records of any of your spending, you know, all of your receipts, as well as any invoicing that you're doing, keeping records of payments that have been made to you, whether in cash or via PayPal, your bank account, via your booking app. I personally do this in a really simple Excel spreadsheet. For another business of mine, we use Xero. Free Agent is another little app that I really recommend to you. And like that, you can just do it as you go, and you haven't got a nightmare with a carrier bag full of receipts at the end of the year. I would suggest that you probably need to be having an accountant if you're not using one of the apps like Xero or Free Agent. Nowadays, if your turnover is, I think in the UK it's something like 70,000. If your turnover is more than that, then you actually have to be using one of these electronic apps to be doing your accounts. I think you're doing extremely well if your turnover is going to be more than 70,000 a year. So most of you, it won't be an issue. I'd suggest as well that you have a separate bank account, because if you do ever get investigated, it's a lot easier if you've just got it all in one discrete account, rather than having you know, all of your household expenses coming out of your bank account as well. If your turnover is more than 85,000, you will need to register for VAT. So that could be an issue if you are setting up a studio and you've got lots of other teachers teaching for you. So do be aware of that. So that means you're going to need to register for VAT, charge VAT at 20% on your classes. And the one upside of it is that any purchases you make that have VAT on them, you can claim that VAT back. In terms of your accounts, this is the kind of thing that you can include in your expenses. So any room hire, marketing costs, costs of setting up and running your website, membership of British Wheel of Yoga, Yoga Alliance, any books that you're buying on yoga, magazines on yoga, any post expenses, computer consumables, you know, ink, even actually your laptop, you'd be able to put that through, your printer, any equipment you're buying for your classes, any equipment you're buying and then selling on to people, any travel costs, subsistence costs while you're out teaching, you know, sort of if you need to buy coffee or lunch. Training is a bit of a grey area. If you look at the British Wheel of Yoga's magazine Spectrum from winter 2019, there's a very useful article that goes beyond the information I'm giving you here, and that will explain why training costs, particularly training costs associated with you becoming a teacher, if you're not teaching at that time and you're claiming for training costs, that may be a little tricky. You can also claim an element for use of your home. I get through so much toilet paper in my home because all my students come in, go to the toilet, wash their hands, come out, and then they go into the toilet again at the end of class. So, you know, there are expenses associated with it, heating, lighting, that kind of thing as well. I've given you an example here of just the way that some of my costs come into my little Excel sheet. So I've numbered each item. That receipt is given the number 1. It goes into a file with the number 1 on it. And then, you know, what was it? Room hire, who did I purchase it from? How much was it? And I've allocated it into separate columns. If you talk to your accountant, they can let you know which columns you should have. But, you know, if you follow what I'm doing there, most accountants will be quite happy with that. Note a few things that I'm doing here. Books are in the first aid course I took, £75. I use music in my classes, so I'm claiming for my Spotify subscription. Claiming for some CPD. Yoga mats I've been buying. You can see I'm buying them off eBay. Merchant services fees with Stripe, all of 55p there. And some of other website costs here, and Envato, buying my website theme at that point. Here is my documentation that comes in my bag with me at all times. So I've done a risk assessment here, so you can see the context, what the different hazards would be, and what the control methods are. These 2 documents are the front and back of an accident report form. So you can see people that witnessed the accident, and I would get, I think there's more information further down for the actual person that was in the accident if they are able to sign that this is a true record. You need to do this under the RIDDOR reporting regulations. So do make sure that you have those accident report forms available, and you'll need to do them. I didn't find any that were just sort of blank on the internet. I needed to create my own. Things to budget for and buy. Mats. Now you can see I'd actually run out of mats in this class, so that's why I've got this photo in. Rather embarrassing. I have got a lot more mats now, so some people were actually having to work on the floor, and obviously I was sort of, you said to them that I'm concerned about you slipping and all the rest. You do this at your own risk. Blocks, bricks and straps. If you teach with props like that, you need a first aid kit, you need your insurance, website hosting, marketing costs, your lesson planning app, class booking app, any room hire costs and music. So you may want to get a Bluetooth player that you can use with your phone, Spotify, and you will need to pay for a PRS license if you are using music that is not in the public domain, which frankly is most of the music we're likely to be using in a yoga class. So that's the kind of thing that you're going to need to be thinking about getting hold of, and some of those you could perhaps start buying fairly early on in the class. That's come to the end of Module 1. I hope that all makes sense to you. If you have any questions at all, do feel free to ask at any of those social media sites there. Our Facebook group, if you are a member of the Digitality Academy, is a really good place to ask questions, and the Facebook page is at the top, but most of our activity actually happens in the group. You're also very welcome, and this is probably the first place that you'll go to ask questions or to comment, to just put something in the comment thread below this video, and that sends an alert to me, and I will be able to answer pretty rapidly, I hope. So thanks for being with me on Module 1. That was quite a long module. Module 2 will be a lot shorter. It's all about what you do to get your website up and running. I'll see you back then.